cult, if you involve yourself in kind of idolatrous or counterfeit religions, counterfeit systems of worship, you participate in these kind of counterfeit rituals and ceremonies to spiritual beings, you might think you're doing it to the true and living God, but that's why we need the scriptures to be able to identify who it is that we are worshiping. And Paul says if you participate in some kind of ceremony or activity in honor of one of these false gods, you really ultimately are involved in the worship and the interaction with demons. And by your actions, by deciding to participate in that, honor that ritual, become a part of that, you have opened up your life to these demonic spirits. You do it in your home. I don't care what home it is, whether it's your house or your church building or the White House. If you participate, if you have one of these rituals in your home, your place of dwelling, you are going to open the doorway, access into your home to these demonic spirits. That's one of the reasons why I encourage people to pray through their homes, especially if you have bought a home that's been inhabited by somebody else before. You know, the reality is you have no idea what was honored in that home, what was done in that home, the kind of values that were exemplified in the behavior of the people in that home. No idea what was honored in that place, what was watched on television, kind of music that was played and filled the atmosphere in that home, and how access or legal ground to dark spirits may have been given to the prior occupants of that house, and you don't know anything about that. So I encourage people, I've done this when we have moved, to pray through the house systematically. I'll take a little vial of oil. I'll first of all begin with the property, because if you buy a home and the property, you are the owner. You have title to that. You have more spiritual authority there than anybody. So I just walk the perimeter of the property and dedicate and sanctify that space, every cubic inch of ground, to Jesus Christ and to his Father. And I'll anoint the four corners of the property. I will take authority over any demonic spirits that have been on that property at any time for any reason. I will ask God to establish a perimeter, warring angels to surround that property, to provide protection for me and for my family. Then I'll do the same thing with the house itself, anoint the four corners of the house, then go inside, pray through every room in the house. I'll even anoint furniture and appliances and every room in the house. Just pray for God's blessing, for his Spirit to fill that place, for any kind of impurity or uncleanness that's been allowed in that place for any reason, that God would see that, bring it under the blood of Christ. He would cleanse it and purify it, make it whole, and it dedicated then to Jesus Christ and to his service. And I've had occasion frequently to pray through homes. When I was a pastor, I'd often pray through homes with people who'd move into a new home, or they'd move into a home they just bought, and we would do the same thing, pray through the house to cleanse it of any impurity that was there, because that's what Paul tells us to do, to cleanse ourselves from everything that defiles, either in body or in spirit. Things can defile the spiritual atmosphere in a home. So I think it's good to do it. I think every home where these things have, where false gods have been worshipped and honored, I think every dwelling place, every residence like that needs at some point to be cleansed. Now, I want to turn our attention just for the next few minutes, and then we'll start taking phone calls. 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840 is the number to call if you want to join our conversation today. Talk about this case that's before the United States Supreme Court. Oral arguments were heard this morning. I saw a link to the transcript on the way across the street to come into the studio. I've not had the opportunity to read the oral arguments, but from my vantage point, it doesn't matter. Because here's what I want to suggest. And again, I want to be very clear here that I'm just speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for anybody else. This is just my thinking, and I'm offering this to you as a suggestion, as a way to think and process the whole issue of religious liberty. I wouldn't say it if I didn't think I was right, obviously, but I want to be very clear that I'm not representing anybody other than just sharing my own thoughts and hoping that it'll stimulate some conversation and some thinking. Now, the case that the Supreme Court heard this morning was from a little town of Greece, New York. It had to do with invocations that were offered prior to city council meetings. It had been done for about a decade. An atheist and a Jewish woman complained about it. They said, we don't like it. We believe this needs to stop. So this, by the way, from the people that fancy themselves as paragons of tolerance. They don't have enough tolerance to let the people in Greece New York offer prayer before city council meetings if they want. That's what tolerance would say. Hey, I might disagree with it. I might not like it, but hey, I'm a tolerant individual. If that's what floats your boat, go ahead and do it. That's what tolerance is all about. They don't have an ounce of tolerance. They're going to impose their moral views on the entire township of Greece, New York. 100,000 people live there, and here are these two people want to use the courts, the tyranny of the courts, to impose their moral view, their worldview on 100,000 people. Two people imposing their will on 100,000 other people. That's tyranny, ladies and gentlemen. There's nothing democratic, nothing representative, nothing just, even-handed, tolerant about that whatsoever. But that's what they're out to do, and they're hoping that the Supreme Court will back them up today. Now, here's what I want to suggest. The Supreme Court is, and I've got a column to this effect. I'm not sure if it's up at rightlyconcerned.com yet or not, but will be if it's not before long. What I want to suggest is that the Supreme Court itself violated the Constitution by even agreeing to hear this case. If the First Amendment has been violated, if the Constitution has been violated, if the Bill of Rights has been violated, it has been violated by the Supreme Court of the United States, which has a solemn and sacred obligation to uphold the Constitution. They're the ones that have transgressed it. And I say that because of the very first word in the First Amendment. And realize, no matter what activist judges have done, no matter what people out there might say, this amendment has never been amended. It's never been modified. It means the same thing today that it meant when it was passed, enacted by the Founding Fathers. The language has never been changed. It means today exactly what it meant in 1789. What's the first word in the First Amendment? Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Now, many of you heard me talk about this before, but it bears repeating. As Samuel Johnson said, we more often need to be stirred, reminded than instructed. And Peter says, it's no pain to me to stir you up by way of reminder. So if you've heard this before, I am stirring you up by way of reminder. But the first word in the First Amendment is Congress. Now, what does that mean? That means that what the Founding Fathers were doing with the First Amendment is they were tying the hands of Congress and Congress alone. The only entity that is addressed in the First Amendment is Congress. It is Congress, that is the federal government, that is prohibited from establishing a religion, that is picking one Christian denomination and making it the official church of the United States. Can't do that. Federal government can't do that. Can't pick the Baptist denomination and pass a law that makes it the official church of the United States. Can't do it. The Episcopal Church, Roman Catholic Church, the Mormon Church, the Baptist Church can't do it. Congress is not allowed to do that to establish a national church. But also, Congress is prohibited from making a law that prohibits the free exercise of religion. Congress cannot do that. Now remember, Congress is the one that enacts legislation. It's the executive branch that enforces it, and it's the judicial branch that applies it. But there's nothing for the executive branch to enforce or to implement until Congress passes a law. And there's nothing for the Supreme Court to rule on until a law has been passed and the executive branch has put it into action. So this is just all about the federal government. We're talking here about the federal government, whether it is Congress, whether it's the executive branch, or whether it is the judicial branch. The whole outfit is prohibited by the First Amendment from establishing a national church or from prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Now, when you have somebody praying before a city council meeting, what is that? That is the exercise of religion. That clergyman or layman or whoever it happens to be, he is exercising his religion. Prayer is one of the exercises of religious faith. So he's exercising his religion. He's putting it into practice. He's putting it on display. He's manifesting it. He's acting it out. acting out on his religious convictions and principles. He is engaged in religious expression. And the First Amendment says Congress is not allowed to prohibit that. Congress can't intervene. Congress can't stop that. And what this means, the executive branch can't, because they can't do anything unless Congress passes a law. And the Supreme Court is prohibited from doing it because the federal government is not allowed to prohibit in any way the free exercise of religion. So can a city council in Greece, New York, violate the First Amendment? No, it's absolutely not. It's impossible. It is constitutionally, logically, rationally, legally, and historically impossible for the city council of Greece, New York, to violate the First Amendment. Why? Because it's not Congress. It's the city council of Greece, New York. It is not the Congress of the United States. First Amendment doesn't restrain a city council. It doesn't restrain a school board, doesn't restrain a mayor, doesn't restrain a state legislature. According to the Founding Fathers, all of the business of religious expression was to be reserved to the states. Let me just read you a quote from Thomas Jefferson, who, of course, is an icon to all of our religious liberty devotees on the left. This is what Thomas Jefferson wrote in 1808. Certainly, talking about the Constitution, no power to prescribe any religious exercise or to assume authority in religious discipline. That's what the Supreme Court's getting ready to do today. They're going to assume authority in religious discipline. Supreme Court is going to assume the authority to tell Greece, New York, whether they can have or not have prayer before city council meetings. But Thomas Jefferson says no power to assume authority in religious discipline has been delegated to the general government. It must then rest with the states as far as it can be in any human authority. So the states, according to the founders, could do whatever they wanted when it came to religious liberty. They want to have prayer before the legislature, they could do it. They want to have an established church, they could do it. And 9 of them did at the time of the founding. Back in 2. Stay with us.